Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parabhajikacharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parabhajikacharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 21st day of May 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 4, Transcendental Knowledge, text number 6, on page 188. You going to follow? Okay. Ajopi san avyayatma Bhutanam Ishwaropi san Prakatim Swamadishtaya Sambhavam Yatma Mayaya Ajopi san avyayatma Bhutanam Ishwaropi san Prakatim Swamadhishtaya Sambhavamyatma Mayaya Ajopi san avyayatma Bhutanam Ishwaropi san Prakatim Swamadhishtaya Sambhavamyatma Mayaya. Ajopi san avyayatma Bhutanam Ishwaropi san Prakatim Swamadhishtaya Sambhavamyatma Mayaya. Ajopi san avyayatma Bhutanam Ishwaropi san Prakatim Swamadhishtaya Sambhavamyatma Mayaya. Want to try it, Prabhu? Not tonight? Okay, go ahead. Ajopi san avyayatma Bhutanam Ishwaropi san Prakatim Swamadhishtaya Sambhavamyatma Mayaya. Not yet, either. Oh, okay. Sarah, you want to try it? Can one more person go before me? Or, all right, let's go. Ajopi san avyayatma Bhutanam Ishwaropi san Prakatim Swamadhishtaya Sambhavamyatma Mayaya. Not bad. Oh, Mahima. You're up.
Ajopi san avyayatma
Ajopi san avyayatma
Bhutanam Ishwaropi san
Bhutanam Ishwaropi san
Prakritim Swamadhishtaya
Prakatim Swamadhishtaya
Sambhavamyatma Mayaya.
Sambhavamyatma Mayaya. Okay, word for words. Ajaha, unborn. Api, although. Son, being so. Abhyaya, without deterioration. Atma, body. Bhutanam, of all those who are born. Ishvaraha, the Supreme Lord. Api, although. Son, being so. Prakatim, in the transcendental form. Swam, of myself. Adhishtaya, being so situated. Sambhavami, I do incarnate. Atmamayaya, by my internal energy. Translation. Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, by my internal energy I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. Purport. The Lord has spoken about the peculiarity of his birth. Although he may appear like an ordinary person, he remembers everything of his many, many past births, whereas a common man cannot remember what he has done even a few hours before. If someone is asked what he did exactly at the same time one day earlier, it would be very difficult for a common man to answer immediately. He would surely have to dredge his memory to recall what he was doing exactly at the same time one day before. And yet, men often dare claim to be God or Krishna. One should not be misled by such meaningless claims. Then again, the Lord explains his prakriti, or his form. Prakriti can mean form also. Prakriti means nature as well as swarup, or one's own form. The Lord says that he appears in his own body. He does not change his body, as the common living entity changes from one body to another. Excuse me. The conditioned soul may have one kind of body in the present birth, but he has a different body in the next birth. In the material world, the living entity has no fixed body, but transmigrates from one body to another. The Lord, however, does not do so. Whenever he appears, he does so in the same original body by his internal potency. In other words, Krishna appears in this material world in his original eternal form, with two hands holding a flute. He appears exactly in his eternal body, uncontaminated by this material world. Although he appears in the same transcendental body and is Lord of the universe, it still appears that he takes his birth like an ordinary living entity. And although his body does not deteriorate like a material body, it still appears that the Lord Krishna grows from childhood to boyhood and from boyhood to youth. But astonishingly enough, he never ages beyond youth. At the time of the Battle of Kurukshetra, he had many grandchildren at home. Or in other words, he had sufficiently aged by material calculations. Still, he looked just like a young man, 20 or 25 years old. We never see a picture of Krishna in old age, because he never grows old like us, although he is the oldest person in the whole creation, past, present, and future. Neither his body nor his intelligence ever deteriorates or changes. Therefore, it is clear that in spite of his being in the material world, he is the same unborn, eternal form of bliss and knowledge, changeless in his transcendental body and intelligence. Excuse me. Factually, his appearance and disappearance are like the sun's rising, moving before us, and then disappearing from our eyesight. When the sun is out of sight, we think that the sun has set, and when the sun is before our eyes, we think that the sun is on the horizon. Actually, the sun is always in its fixed position, but owing to our defective, insufficient senses, we calculate the appearance and disappearance of the sun in the sky. And because Lord Krishna's appearance and disappearance are completely different from that of any ordinary common living entity, it is evident that he is eternal, blissful knowledge by his internal potency, and he is never contaminated by material nature. The Vedas confirm that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is unborn, yet he still appears to take his birth in multi-manifestations. The Vedic supplementary literatures also confirm that even though the Lord appears to be taking his birth, he is still without change of body. In the Bhagavatam, he appears before his mother as Narayan, with 4 hands and the decorations of the 6 kinds of full opulences. His appearance in his original eternal form is his causeless mercy, bestowed upon the living entities so that they can concentrate on the Supreme Lord as he is, and not on mental concoctions or imaginations, which the impersonalist wrongly thinks the Lord's forms to be. The word Maya, or Atma Maya, refers to the Lord's causeless mercy, according to the Vishvakosh dictionary. The Lord is conscious of all of his previous appearances and disappearances, but a common living entity forgets everything about his past body as soon as he gets another body. He is the Lord of all living entities because he performs wonderful and superhuman activities while he is on the earth, while he is on this earth. Therefore, the Lord is always the same absolute truth and is without differentiation between his form and self, or between his qualities and body. A question may now be raised as to why the Lord appears and disappears in this world, and this is explained in the next verse. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance to him and all members of Sri Parampara. Excuse me. Okay. Sorry, I have a very fallible body. I need some water. Okay. Did I do Om again? I think I did do that. Okay. Hare Krishna. So, the Lord is explaining his own appearance, and Srila Prabhupada makes it clear that it's distinct from what we go through when we change bodies. He doesn't actually change his body. And he doesn't always appear in his original form. He has all these other avatars. As explained here, he appeared as a little child, a little newborn with the lotus and conch and all the other forms, symbols, which is very unusual. And they both Vasudeva and Devaki were surprised to see this. And then he transformed himself into a little ordinary little child. And of course, Vasudeva then took him out into Vrindavan. So one very important point, one very important phrase in this translation, that by my internal energy, I still appear in every millennium. Atma Mayaya, that's one of the meanings of Atma Mayaya. And that was not there in the translation when it first came out, but I noticed it was missing, and we were able to put that in. So we don't appear by Atma Maya. We're forced to appear. You know, in the ordinary course of events, a usual living entity leaves the body breaks down. That's what death is. And according to one's activities and one's mentality, you get another body according to higher forces. You know, the higher. I'm sorry, that's not going to work. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay. So that's a great distinction. Krishna is leaving one, is disappearing and appearing at another time by his own energy and his own will, and he doesn't forget anything. But we're tiny, tiny, tiny spirit surrounded by matter, and when we appear, we forget everything, and we go into the womb, and Prabhupada said death is like going to sleep for 7 months. Actually, he said 6 months, because no, he said 7 months, but it's actually 6 months. But because by the lunar calendar, it's 10 months in the womb, because they're shorter months. That's why they have more months. But in any case, we forget. Remember that Krishna is in the heart, and he said, Sarvasya chaha mridisannivishto mattak smatir jnanam apohanangsha. That I, as a super soul, is situated in everyone's heart. Always. There's two souls in the body. And from him, or from me, he says, come knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. And that forgetfulness is very important, because if we remembered all of our previous births, we'd probably be paralyzed, you know. Can you imagine the PTSD from that one? So that's a blessing. Forgetfulness is often a blessing. But Krishna doesn't forget anything. That's why that was the whole puzzlement of Arjuna. How is it possible? We're contemporaries. How did you speak this? You remember how the chapter began? How did you speak this Bhagavad Gita to the sun god millions of years ago? You know, I know you as my friend of the same age. So Krishna explains that, yes, you were there in another capacity because you're my eternal friend, but you changed your body and therefore you forgot. I don't change my body and therefore I forget. And of course, even if we don't change our body, we still forget a lot of things, right? Just through the brain. We're fallible, you know. So there's this eternal distinction between us. So Krishna is explaining his birth, and then the very important question is why, and that comes up in the next verse. All right, so then this famous verse, most of you born in India, can chant it without looking at the transliteration. Maybe. Anyway, we'll see. Yada hidahi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutanam dharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and the predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. Purport. The word srijami is significant herein. Srijami cannot be used in the sense of creation, because according to the previous verse, there is no creation of the Lord's form or body, since all of the forms are eternally existent. Therefore, srijami means that the Lord manifests himself as he is. Although the Lord appears on schedule, namely at the end of the Dwapara Yuga of the 28th millennium of the 7th Manu, in one day of Brahma, he has no obligation to adhere to such rules and regulations because he is completely free to act in any way he likes at his will. He therefore appears by his own will whenever there is a predominance of irreligiosity and a disappearance of true religion. The principles of religion are laid down in the Vedas, and any discrepancy in the matter of properly executing the rules of the Vedas makes one irreligious. In the Bhagavatam it is stated that such principles are the laws of the Lord. Only the Lord can manufacture a system of religion. The Vedas are also accepted as originally spoken by the Lord himself to Brahma from within his heart. Therefore, the principles of Dharma, or religion, are the direct orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. This is spoken by Yamaraj. These principles are clearly indicated throughout the Bhagavad Gita. The purpose of the Vedas is to establish such principles under the order of the Supreme Lord. And the Lord directly orders at the end of the Gita that the highest principle of religion is to surrender unto him only, and nothing more. The Vedic principles push one towards complete surrender unto him, and whenever such principles are disturbed by the demoniac, the Lord appears. From the Bhagavatam we understand that Lord Buddha is the incarnation of Krishna who appeared when materialism was rampant, and materialists were using the pretext of the authority of the Vedas. Using the pretext of the Vedas to slaughter cows. To kill the cows. Although there are certain restrictive rules and regulations regarding animal sacrifice for particular purposes in the Vedas, people of demoniac tendency still took to animal sacrifice without reference to the Vedic principles. Lord Buddha appeared in order to stop this nonsense and to establish the Vedic principles of nonviolence. Therefore, each and every avatar or incarnation of the Lord has a particular mission, and they are all described in the revealed scriptures. No one should be accepted as an avatar unless he is referred to by scriptures. It is not a fact that the Lord appears only on Indian soil. He can manifest himself anywhere and everywhere, and whenever he desires to appear. In each and every incarnation, he speaks as much about religion as can be understood by the particular people under their particular circumstances. But the mission is the same, to lead people to God consciousness and obedience to the principles of religion. Sometimes he descends personally, and sometimes he sends his bona fide representative in the form of his son or servant, or himself in some disguised form. The principles of the Bhagavad Gita were spoken to Arjuna, and for that matter to other highly elevated persons, because they were highly advanced compared to ordinary persons in other parts of the world. 2 + 2 = 4 is a mathematical principle that is true both in the beginner's arithmetic class and in the advanced class as well. Still, there are higher and lower mathematics. In all incarnations of the Lord, therefore, the same principles are taught, but they appear to be higher and lower in varied circumstances. The higher principles of religion begin with the acceptance of the 4 orders and 4 statuses of social life, 4 spiritual orders and 4 statuses of social life, as will be explained later. The whole purpose of the mission of incarnations is to arouse Krishna consciousness everywhere. Such consciousness is manifest and non-manifest only under different circumstances. So this is a key verse. You know, when does Krishna appear? The yada yada means whenever, and that implies wherever as well. A decline in religious practice. So that periodically happens just by the force of time. We learned that at the beginning of the chapter. That's why Krishna was renewing the parampara, because the science as it is has become lost due to the Mahakala, the great power of time. Time causes confusion everywhere. Entropy increases, and we read in the 12th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam the characteristics of the age of Kali. How this things get so disorganized. There's no religion. Marriage is an imagination. The government is all made of corrupt, scoundrels who simply tax the people and keep the tax and don't, And it's just they just want to go to the forest, to escape. It's just confusion. So Krishna appears even in this Kali Yuga. Now this is a special Kali Yuga. This is not an ordinary Kali Yuga, and because once in the day of Brahma, Krishna comes himself, and right after he comes as himself, in the following Kali Yuga, he comes as Lord Chaitanya. But the day of Brahma is very, very long. I'm not going to tell you again how many billions of years it is, but it's incredible. And then when we think, My goodness, it's been just 5,000 years since Krishna was here. We have the very words of the Lord. What to speak of Lord Chaitanya, 500 plus a few years. So we're practically contemporaries. That means we're very fortunate, and we should take advantage of that good fortune by trying to advance as far as possible, as quick as possible in devotional service. That's why one of the qualities, one of the characteristics of pure devotions of Vyartakalatvam, not wasting time, recognizing, that every moment counts, every day. Where there's this famous verse, Ayu haradi vaipungsam udyanastan yashannaso tasyarteyat kudar utamashloka lalasa. That the rising and setting of the sun takes away the life of everyone, except those who use their time for glorifying the Lord, for being absorbed in Krishna consciousness. So that doesn't mean that we're not going to die because we're now become immortal. In these bodies, but it means that you're on the transcendental plane. That the things that you're doing are the same things that you'll do for eternity. In other words, there's no contrast, because what's going on in the spiritual world? Service, constant glorification of the Lord. And that's what the pure devotees do, and set examples, you see? How to organize your time so that you can be, as much as possible, remembering the Lord and doing an active service. Of course, those who are fortunate, to actually be spending their whole day and being in the movement, that's one thing. But even if you're not, you can still maximize how much you remember Krishna and chant nicely. And again, this word dharma comes up. The dharma always comes up, and Prabhupada emphasized it in the introduction. And Sanatan Dharma, the eternal Dharma. There are all kinds of dharmas, because we know from the second verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Dharma projita kaita votra. Here in the Bhagavatam, we're not going to deal with any of these cheating religions, you see, and all these kaitava dharma, which take you in a certain direction, but not toward Krishna. It may be a dharma by which you can get a very, very healthy body, a dharma by which you can learn to be a great musician or whatever it may be. That's a kind of a practice. But it's not. It's not a dharma that's declared by the Lord. Dharma is sakshat bhagavat pranitam, and we find out what real dharma is at the beginning of Bhagavatam. In the first chapter, the sages at Naimisharanya asked the question of Sutta Goswami: what is that dharma by which people can be by the soul can be very pleased, it can be very happy, And he answered the question, Savai Pungsang Paro Dharmo Yato Bhaktir Adhokshaje Ahaitu Kya Pratiyata Yayatma Supersediti. The supersediti means pleased all the time. So that dharma which engenders pure devotion to Adhokshaja. Now Adhokshaja is a very important name. It often comes up. It's a name of God, a name of Krishna, which has nothing to do with his Leela. But it has to do with the fact that we can't perceive him, that he's completely transcendental to our mind and senses. You see, that's what Ada Akshaja. Ada Akshaja means that knowledge which is gained through our senses, that ascending process, which is always imperfect because the senses are imperfect, the mind is imperfect. If we're trying to, that's the scientific method. You observe. You see a trend, you make a theory, you test it, you go back, it's a hypothesis, all of that. That's called the ascending form of that. But it's always limited, because our senses are imperfect, we make mistakes, we become bewildered, you see. So this adha means down. So Krishna pushes that kind of knowledge down. In other words, he's transcendental to all of that kind of knowledge. He can only be known as much as he wants to be known. He reveals according to our sincerity, according to our devotion and our nice practice. And that's part of the clearing of the heart, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. In other words, the knowledge is there. Don't forget that this chanting, which is the essence of the practice we're doing, is also Vidyavadu Jivanam, is the wife of, or the active principle of knowledge. Which reveals, if you're polishing the heart, you're becoming more and more enlightened from within. The Lord is enlightening you as the super soul, and from without is the spiritual master in the Shastra. So that's what's going on. He's being revealed. But in order to practice this Dharma, one has to be on hoitaki and apratayata. Very important two words. Hoitaki means not without motivation, but without material motivation. See, and uninterrupted. That's of course a goal to achieve. If we could be always engaged without any material motivation, then we'll be fully pleased all the time. We'll be happier and happier because we'll be contacting Krishna. We'll be experiencing the happiness that comes from serving Krishna all the time, participating in his happiness. That's what real devotion means. And the ideal here, the closest thing we have, mother's love for the child. There's no deal, there's no bargain. Okay, you can have your formula as long as no. If the child is healthy and happy and safe, the mother is pleased. No, there doesn't have to be anything else. There's no money involved. There's no exchange. It's not a transactional deal. So that's unmotivated. We call unmotivated. No material motive. There's no unmotivated love, and that's the ideal that we want to direct toward Krishna. Simply, if we see Krishna is nicely dressed on the altar, he's being served nicely, and we can help out somehow, then the devotee is very pleased. He's satisfied. It's completely different than material things. What's in it for me? Everything. The problem is you don't know who you really are. You see, you're not understanding that this is for your real soul, the real self, and that's why we see the great devotees like Srila Prabhupada and others. They can be happy and peaceful in any circumstance. And we saw with Prahlad, we did the whole 7th canto. It was amazing. Prahlad, what does it really mean? Always the source of Lada means the blissful, the Ladadi Shakti. He's always happy and peaceful. And how can that be? He's being tormented by his demonic father, and yet because he's always absorbed in thinking of Krishna and praying to Krishna, he's connected and feeling protected. And even at the time of death, that's the ideal. Says, okay, let me take off these old clothes, and basically that's what you think. The body, is leaving, and use, the Vaikuntha, Vishnu Dutas are coming to pick you up in the airplane and so forth. It's a whole different experience. I mean, I as you probably know, I think most of you know, I've given these classes so often. I worked in a hospital for a year as an inhalation therapist. And in that particular service, you see a lot of people die because you're always running up to the 999. I think there's a code, and I'm taking the oxygen and everything and pumping. One time I have to confess, I plugged it into the regular air instead of the oxygen, and the poor guy was having a heart attack. And I said, "Why is he breathing so hard?" But he was young. He didn't die right then. Hopefully he survived. I don't know if he did or not. I'm still working that one off. But it's a real sobering experience. And at a certain point, I started reading the Bhagavad Gita while I still had this job, and I was seeing birth, old age, disease, and disease. I was seeing how people really, it's just so terrifying because everything is being taken away. Their ability to communicate oftentimes and be independent, just to go to the bathroom, and there's often pain and suffering, and it's a terribly traumatic experience for ordinary persons to leave the body. But I also saw many devotees leave because they would ask me to chant. And I was telling the story about Radhanath Das, I think last night, or this morning, or Monday morning. It was last night, right? And there were so many others, and it was different. Not all of them were on the same level, but all of them were different from what I saw in the hospital. All this chanting going on, and more or less they're, relatively peaceful, according to, compared to the ordinary person. So that's the big test. And here in this verse, again, back to the Dharma, and it's right at the beginning of the book. It's the second chapter, right near the beginning of the chapter. And I often thought that the Sutta Goswami, Shukadeva Goswami, they know that this is going to be in the Kali Yuga. And they know that it's going to be 18 big volumes with Srila Prabhupada's purports and everything. And are these Kali Yugites really going to be able to get through this whole Bhagavatam? We better put a full lesson in right near the beginning. So even if they get through the second chapter, they'll still get the whole. And those verses, there's like a whole, complete lesson in Bhakti there. And we made it into a book. Just like prepares the Queen Kunti, the teachings of Kapila Dev, Prabhupada, the Bhagavatam verse, with everything we had, and Prabhupada's purports, and selections from his talks on that particular verse, and very illuminating. So that, this is all about Dharma. When Lord Krishna sees that the Dharma, the real Dharma, is confusion, glani, discrepancies, right? Yeah, discrepancies. In other words, there's all kinds of dharmas, and there's cheating dharmas, ku-dharmas, so-called dharmas. These, even the Indian yogis would come to America, as so many did during Prabhupada's time, And instead of teaching bhakti, they're teaching hatha yoga. I told them, some of you may know Amala Bhakta Swami, He was my teacher. He was my first yoga teacher. Back in 71, 72. And I would drive into the city, into Manhattan, and he was running this yoga studio on the east side, Upper East Side, Manhattan. And I made maybe a dozen lessons with him. But it wasn't, it was more older people, it wasn't a young crowd. So then I went to the west side, where there was young yogis and everything. But he later left there, and he became Amala Bhakta Swami in ISKCON. And he told me later that, he wondered what happened to Tom. That was me, because I was doing some service, and then in there we were preparing a Ramayana and everything. Even from there, it's amazing, literature, production of literature. Actually, his guru was the service was to copy what was already there. It's a total plagiarism. It kind of puzzled me after a while. But anyway, so then when I left, he somehow found out that I had joined ISKCON. And he then got curious, and across town, that's when we had the big temple, the 55th Street Temple in Manhattan. It was the big, and it was just like across, a few blocks west. And he attended a lecture with Vidyananda Das Goswami, and he was blown away. And he decided to leave his guru, because he felt cheated. And he did, escaped and came to Los Angeles, where his mother was his original home. And that's where I was. So he visited the temple, the Watseka Boulevard. Most of you have seen it, So at that time, where the store is, if you know where the gift shop is, it's on the second floor above the restaurant now. But that was the prasadam room for everybody. That was where we would take prasadam at that time. So I'm up there, and there's what was his name? Shiva Prem Swami. That's what he was known by in the other. And I said, oh boy, he's come to try to take some of our bhaktas. I didn't know he left the other group. So I told Donovan Maharaj. He wasn't a Maharaj at that time, but he was always with the bhaktas, So watch out for him. I know this guy. He thinks he's going to take our bhaktas. So it turns out, no, he wanted to become a bhakta. Even at his age, he was like, 45 or something. Most of the bhaktas were 20, So. But he was an ideal bhakta, and he became, he's very well known for his recordings. He made some professional recordings of some of Prabhupada's books, very, very famous. So, and if you're interested, I can send you, because I was working on BTG, so he came over and he sat down with me and he told me the whole story of how he left, and how he finally realized that his guru was cheating him. He would come once a year and demand that you rent a penthouse for, even a week. It's probably $3,000 at least, right in mid-Manhattan. And then he would have people come. I went to see him. If you paid $15, you could come and sit him and speak for maybe 10 minutes, And if you paid $30, you could get initiated. Please, So anyway, I didn't see him as a spiritual leader. But Amala had worked with him for years, and he saw that, and he sat down and he told me all that he felt and his realization of what happened. It's very interesting, and it's by Amala Bhakta as told to Dravida Das, the story. So I'll send it to you. You'll see. It's very very interesting story. Huh? No, it's a long article in Back to Godhead magazine. Is it? Yeah. Yeah. I just export. I'll make a PDF and I'll send it to you. Yeah.
Quick question, Hare Krishna. So what did Srila Prabhupada mean by sometimes he sends his son or sons? Was he referring to Jesus or something in the purport?
Yeah. It means it's understood that the great devotees, including Srila Prabhupada, were are nitya siddhas. They're not conditioned at any time. And sometimes they manifest their devotion at a certain time, but they're still special representatives. He's referring to the great devotees like himself, which he wouldn't say, who are his representatives and who are completely fixed on teaching and spreading this science for the benefit of people. So because Krishna does it himself, as he's doing it here with the Bhagavad Gita, but it's understood that he's not going to stay here forever. He spent 125 years, but his teachings came, his disciples were there, and then he came again as Lord Chaitanya, which is a very unusual. He doesn't come in every Kali Yuga. And so that's what he's speaking about. Lord Chaitanya, in his teaching to Sanatana Goswami, he explains how the super soul, who is Krishna, we don't want to hear him. We're not listening. He's trying to enlighten us. But he comes externally. Therefore, he comes externally as the acharyas, as the shastra, and as the sadhus in general, in order to enliven and enlighten those who are receptive. That's always the looking for somehow. And Krishna and Lord Chaitanya was so brilliant. You don't have to do anything. There's no prerequisite, right? There's no hard and fast rules. Just come and join us in the chanting. It's fun, There's this thing called Taurya Trikena. Taurya Trikena. Taurya Trikena, I learned about this, is something we all know about, but not by that name. Singing and dancing and playing musical instruments. Now you think, yeah, let's go to the rave, let's go to the rock concert, So that can be a source of great sense gratification, as it often is. But Lord Chaitanya, he saw how he could engage those things to bring people into the chanting of the holy name. So Sankirtan is exactly that: singing and dancing and playing musical instruments. And sometimes those musical instruments, it's amazing. I was just amazed. We remember Ramoga Leela. I mean, he came. He was about 18. I don't know, 19. I think he had just graduated from high school. And within a week, he's playing a harmonium. Wow. Within another week, he's playing a drum. I swear to God, he was so precocious with that, and skill. He keeps getting better and better. It's just some people, and he's tremendous in his classes. You can see he's studying, quoting shlokas. Yeah, nice voice, and he's learned Bengali, and I'm sure he's learning Sanskrit now. So, you can see now here's someone who can really be a wonderful, force in spreading Krishna consciousness. I'm sure he is doing nicely there. And we were fortunate to have him for so many months. Yes, you had something.
Krishna says that he always comes with the rise of irreligion.
When what?
Whenever there is a rise of irreligion.
Irreligion, when is it described? Yeah.
But in the present age, it's just 5,000 years of Kali Yuga has passed. It's still is so terrible. So there are 4,27,000 years is pending, according to Bhagavatam. So why not Krishna coming in between?
Well, he has come. He is here. And he's here in the form of this movement, actually, Prabhupada said, you see. In other words, there's a certain schedule that he comes. I mean, he could come again if he wants, But the point is that it's in the hands of his competent representatives. He did come as Lord Chaitanya, and he trained, the 6 Goswamis, and the line came, down. Now it was lost for a while, and then Bhaktivinoda Thakur came. So this is a way, in effect, of glorifying his devotees, giving the mantle to his great devotees like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktivedanta, and Srila Prabhupada and others, to carry on and doing exactly what he was doing, spreading this truth of Krishna consciousness. So our point is we should take advantage of it as much as possible and be forces for the spread of this science, which is really the only hope for this world. I mean, you can imagine the things that are. I mean, there's so many things that seem to be moving toward disaster: the climate change and the political situation and the economics and everything. But all we can do is spread this message, and the simple living and high thinking. The simple living would solve the problems of so many things. Because it's all this, I got to fly here, I got to drive there, I got to do this, we got to exploit this, and simple living means as lightly, tread as lightly on the earth as possible, and become fully self-realized, and then you don't have to come back. There's one less burden on the earth, right? One less organism that has to be fed. So yeah, he sticks to. And don't forget, there's all these other planets. He's going different universe, and it's explained that he's always appearing somewhere in the material universe. So right now, there's Janmashtami somewhere. Yeah. And there's also the Rasa dance going on in some universe. Yeah. So actually, what it says that if we fully realize that we know our rasa and everything, then we go to that planet where Krishna is appearing for final training, and then from there we go back to Godhead. So yes, you have a question, but we need a mic for her. Because we have an audience.
Thank you.
Sure.
Wonderful. You touched on this before, and I've been waiting to ask you this question, and you're touching on it again. If you would allow me so kindly to read 2 verses in the Holy Bible, and then tell me what you think in the Vedic scriptures this means, because this is the one who comes after me and is ahead of me, the one even the strings of whose shoes I am not good enough to untie. But this repeats itself, the one who comes after me and is ahead of me, the one who came before me. So it's touching on this, and I can't explain it to Westerners. So I came specifically today because you touched on it, because I have to explain this to Westerners, and I don't know how to do it. So
it's the one who came before me and the one who's coming after me?
The one who's coming after me, and then it's another one. This is the one of whom I said, the man who comes after me is yet ahead of me because he was before me.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Krishna appeared before Jesus, and Lord Chaitanya appeared after him.
And no doubt he studied the Vedic scriptures. There is doubt. Well, you would think that he would all.
Well, there's some evidence that Jesus went east to India, right?
He was a merchant. His father was a merchant, a rich merchant at that. He could go.
Yeah, there's some evidence. And that walking on water, that's like a standard yogic power.
Is it?
Yes, to become as light as possible, you can even walk on water.
I remember reading something where the Buddha vanished on one side of the river, then appeared on the other side of the river.
Oh yeah, that's elementary.
Oh wow! Because to Westerners, again, the God consciousness isn't really covered except in John 1. So I call it a brief history of time, space, and God, and everyone's mind is just blown. So I come here and he said that's for beginners. God right? So if you could help me explain that to Westerners, again, this is the one of whom I said, the man who comes after me is yet ahead of me because he was before me. Can you put that into where I could say in Vedic literature? Well,
yeah. I mean, chronologically, this is 5,000 years ago. Now Jesus was what, about 2,000 years ago, a little more. So Krishna came before.
And then it's every millennium, right? So it could be 1, then 2.
Yeah, but millennium,
Is that
I think most likely is. The way that makes the most sense that the one who came after is Lord Krishna's incarnation as Chaitanya, which was just 500 years ago. So Krishna came before him, and Krishna's come after him personally.
So it would be Krishna no matter whose incarnation it was in. Krishna came before, Krishna came after.
Yes, it's the same personality, but in a different form. The golden avatar and preaching the holy name. He
So
looks
it
different.
wouldn't be anyone else but Krishna. I could say this is
Yeah,
Krishna
yeah.
because he's the only one who can do this. Come before, yet after.
Yes, and it's God himself. That's God himself.
God himself. Because you were talking about that born in a different body each millennium, but it's not a body. So
Yeah. He doesn't take a material body. He comes in a different form, but it's not a material body.
So the Christ took a material body. How is that?
Well, I mean, because he's a jiva. In other words, he was a jiva.
A jiva?
In other words, like
that
us, an
Shiva?
individual soul.
Okay.
You see, and the crucifixion is a common. The Prabhupada talks about that. Is that the great preachers, they are on a different plane, a spiritual plane, and so they realize that this is just happening, but this is not me. That I'm going to be leaving that, and you become very tolerant. You're able to be very tolerant of that. Unlike us would be freaking out. But if you're a great yogi, I mean, if you can control, you can withdraw the consciousness from the physical body and be completely absorbed in God and Krishna, as Krishna, and not suffer. We have the idea, the Haridas Thakur. He was an associate of Lord Chaitanya. He was a regular jiva, but he was fully self-realized, and he would chant the holy name. Our little bhajan is 16 rounds. Now, 16 rounds of that name is about 27,000 names, I think, something like that. You multiply it out.
Oh.
But this Haridas Thakur would chant 300,000 names every day. He would chant 16 hours a day. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna.
That's Islam, where you multiply it.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great.
And he was so self-controlled and tolerant, both sides, because there's two sides. One is tolerating pain, and the other is tolerating allurements for sense pleasure. You see?
A woman's pleasure? Did you say tolerating
An allurements for sense
Allurements,
pleasure.
okay.
Yeah. So this prostitute came in the middle of the night. I won't tell the whole story.
No, this is a
Chanting,
this
chanting,
is
chanting.
common Christian theme too. You have to not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he's chanting, and in a quiet place in the country, is ideal. And so she comes. She was assigned to seduce him, because he was becoming very famous.
Okay.
He was born as a Muslim, but he converted to a Hindu, and that was a real no-no because the Muslims were ruling India. So therefore they tried. So this was one way of degrading him. They tried to seduce him. So they signed this nice prostitute, young girl. Said, yeah, no problem, I can. So she goes, and he's chanting. He notices there, and she says, I want to be with you. And so he says, no problem, we're good. But I have to finish my rounds. And I've taken a vow of chanting 10 million names this month.
Oh.
And so just let me finish. I'm almost done, So you chant, and then the sun rises, And she goes back to the guy who hired her and said, what happened? And so she said, well, he promised to be with me, but, it'll take a day or two. So no, be patient. So she goes back the next day, and he's the same thing. He's chanting, and he says, oh, I'm so sorry about the other night, but there's no problem. Tonight, no problem. So she's sitting there, and she's kind of bored. He's chanting, so I might as well chant. So she starts chanting too, which is very auspicious. She's also, she's she knows all of the science. So then he apologized. Oh, I almost finished, but the sun came up. So by that time, the third night, she's chanting go on, and she realizes who he really is, and she bows down and says, oh, I'm so sorry, I was assigned to. She says, I knew all about that. I stayed here just for your benefit, so now here's what you do. You just keep chanting. You can have this place, because I go, I'll have some other place. You stay here and chant, and you'll see all your needs will be taken care of. Give whatever you have to the Brahmins and the Vaishnavas, and you just chant here. And sure enough, she became famous Vaishnavi, and people would come bring bread. In fact, they come here. They bring bags of rice and everything. So she. And then on the other side, Haridas was arrested by the sheriff, because he was becoming famous, well known as a Vaishnava, but he was born a Muslim, so this was, so they arrested him and said, listen, you can, if you just declare again for Allah, there's a whole thing you can do, you'll be okay.
La ilaha illallah, yeah.
There's a thing, I don't know. So he said, but look, what's the problem? There's so many Hindus have been converted into Muslim. What's the problem if one Muslim becomes a Hindu? They didn't like that. So he said, okay, you have that's your attitude, then we'll execute you. They had two guys.
This is Jesus with the Pharisees. This is
the same thing, right?
Yeah, wow.
So they took him, and traditionally they would beat you to death in the marketplace, a public execution, So they take him to the first marketplace, big burly guys, they're hitting him with sticks, And he's just chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. He doesn't feel anything. Later on, Lord Chaitanya told him, I was on your back, preventing from feeling anything. So he's just chanting, and the guys are going from one to the other. They come to the 22nd marketplace, and he's not even feeling it. He's not even crying out in pain. And they say, oh boy, now we're in trouble, because if you're not executed, then we have to die. So Haridas, he'll kill us.
This is Jesus being beaten. Wow.
So Haridas says, oh, no problem, then I'll die. Now, maybe you don't know that, but you can go into trance and it seems like you're dead. This is samadhi,
Oh,
so they went into samadhi and they thought he was dead. He said, oh, thank God. So I don't know if they said thank God, but anyway. So they take him back, what they think is the dead body.
Right.
And they take him to the Kazi. He said, what should we do? Should we bury him here on the riverside? He said, no, we become a place of pilgrimage for the Hindus. Just throw him in the river. Throw the dead body in the river. So they threw what they thought was his corpse in the river, and he woke up, came out of the trance, and he went on the other side, and he kept chanting. And they said, okay, that's it. You can do whatever you want. They told him beforehand, if you survive this, then you can.
Oh wow. So
he was, but the lesson is he was tolerant on both ends. He was tolerant of the allurement. He wasn't allured at all. He just stayed there for her. And then he was completely tolerant for the pain, and that's why he is called Namacharya, and he occupies a very exalted post in our, saint, all the saints.
This is beautiful. Saint Thomas Aquinas chased it has to be a noblewoman who's a prostitute. He chased her away with a fire poker.
Oh, really?
So I like this chant, 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 chant,
yeah,
chant.
Yeah.
Come back, chant, chant, chant. And
the
then
chanting,
he changes her.
Huh?
He changes her. He
yes,
makes her
totally.
Instead of chasing her away with a fire poker, he enlightens her.
Yes, and she became.
I love this.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and that's all in the book called the Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Oh, it's not in the Bhagavad Gita?
No, it's not in the Bhagavad Gita, but actually the story may be there in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, which is just one. It's a very nice summary of Lord Chaitanya's teachings. I highly recommend.
It's here now.
Okay, you got it.
And what's
there.
the name of the gentleman?
Haridas.
Haridas?
Haridas Thakur. Haridas means servant of Hari.
Okay.
And Thakur is a word of great honor.
Haridas Thakur?
Yes, Haridas Thakur.
Okay.
Okay, you got it.
Hare Krishna.
Now we got to stop. Oh my God. Okay. I beg to be blessed by the best of the blissful boys of Vrindavan Dham. That's the poem for the evening. They're going to blow that conch.